Hello everyone, welcome to beautiful Supervan City, where we're getting ready for the MHRA Micronationals. We're at the historic Guthrie Creek Dragway, opened in 1991, and it's been a popular stop on the MHRA Tour ever since. We've got 3 classes of Micro 1/144th scale drag racing for you today. On the docket is Pro Stock. We've got 2 cars, so it'll just be a best of 5 races with no qualifying. And then we've got 6 funny cars and 13 top fuel dragsters that will duke it out in a single elimination bracket. The top 2 qualifiers from funny car and the top 3 qualifiers from top fuel will get an automatic bye into round 2. And we're ready to go racing in the Pro Stock Series. We've got George Marnell out of Las Vegas, Nevada in the right lane, and Mike Thomas from Knoxville, Tennessee in the left. Mike Thomas takes the first race running a 7.20. We've got 4 more Pro Stock races for you today. Thomas and Marnell are going to alternate lanes between each race. Next up, it's Funny Car. We've got Tom Hammonds, who normally drives a self-owned Pro Stock car. Today he's going to be driving a car for Tony Bartone and Vaughn Smith out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And it's Vaughn Smith a little quicker there with a 5.34. Tom Hammonds puts in a 5.40. On the line now, it's Frank Manzo. They call him Ace with 105 national event wins. And in the far lane, it's Tony Bartone out of Manhasset, New York. And Tony Bartone was a little quicker, but neither driver has beaten Vaughn Smith so far. We've got a 7.20 for Tony Bartone, an 8.40 for Frank Manzo. They are 3rd and 4th respectively so far. Now it's Tim Wilkerson in the near lane out of Springfield, Illinois, and he will be going up against Jim Epler from Phoenix, Arizona. And funny car qualifying is done. Vaughn Smith is going to take the fastest time into the elimination round. Tim Wilkerson is 4th with a 7.74, and Jim Epler 5th, a 7.80. And here's how the funny car bracket will look for the elimination rounds. Vaughn Smith and Tom Hammonds, the 1 and 2 seed, will get the bye into the semifinal round. Next up, it's top fuel qualifying. We've got John Shoemaker from Sacramento, California in the near lane. Lining up next to him is Bobby Taylor out of Laguna Hills, California. And John Shoemaker will take the provisional pole with a time of 4.40, Bobby Taylor 4.60. Now we've got Randy Parks from Lombard, Illinois, and in the far lane next to him is Bob Vandegrift Jr. from Alpharetta, Georgia. And John Shoemaker keeps his pole. Bob Vandegrift is going to be in 3rd so far with a 4.80. Randy Parks with a 5.20 in 4th. Lining up now, we've got Doug Foxworth out of Lytle, Texas, and Rhonda Hartman from Anderson, South Carolina. She is the first and youngest woman to win an IHRA national event. And Rhonda Hartman's engine lets go. That is unfortunate. She will have no time posted. Doug Foxworth goes into 5th with a 5.40. The track appears to be getting slower as we go on. Coming to the line now, we've got Doug Herbert from Cherryville, North Carolina, and Joe Otama, who is a clone of Joe Amato, who we will be seeing later on in this qualifying round. Joe Otama is not an evil clone, however. He is, in fact, lawful neutral. And we're seeing times continue to get slower. The ambient temperature must be rising a bit. We've got Doug Herbert with a 7.40 and Joe Otama 7.80. John Shoemaker's provisional pole still stands for now. Coming up next, Shelly Anderson out of Ontario, California, and 5-time top fuel champion Joe Amato. And finally, a bit of a breakthrough, Shelly Anderson into 6th with a 5.50, Joe Amato 6 flat. 3 more drivers are set to make their qualifying runs here. Right now, we've got Portland, Oregon's Kristen Powell, the youngest driver in the field, and to her outside in the far lane, Jay Payne from Upland, California. Big crash! Kristen Powell goes sailing off the racetrack. That is a hard impact. Safety crews are on their way to Kristen Powell now. Looks like she is moving around inside the cockpit. That is good to see. Meanwhile, Jay Payne looks like he is now in 5th with a time of 5.30. As Kristen Powell exits the car under her own power, looks like they'll have to go to a backup car, but she will still be racing in the elimination rounds. Finally, all by himself in the near lane, it's Bakersfield, California's Bruce Sarver. And a quick time from Bruce Sarver moves into third with a 470, and that means that John Shoemaker has won the number 1 seed and will get a bye into round 2 of the Top Fuel bracket. You can take a look here. Bobby Taylor and Bruce Sarver will also get byes into the second round. Now it's time for the second race for our 2 Pro Stock drivers. Thomas this time in the near lane, Marnell in the far lane. Thomas takes this one as well, both drivers improving their times to 5:34 and 5:40 respectively. We are ready now for the elimination rounds in Top Fuel and Funny Car. Round 1 for Top Fuel, our first matchup. It's a rematch from qualifying, Shelly Anderson versus Exeter, Pennsylvania's Joe Amato. Second verse, same as the first. Anderson once again beats Amato to the line and will move on to round 2 to face the number 1 seed, John Shoemaker. Up next, it's the 4 seed, Bob Vandergrift Jr., who was the 1994 Rookie of the Year, going up against Kristen Powell, who in 1997, at 18 years old, became the second youngest pro winner at the Mopar Parts Nationals in Englishtown, New Jersey. She skipped her prom to race. Well, silver lining for Powell, she crosses the finish line in one piece this time, but it's Vandergrift Jr. who is going to move on to round 2. Now we've got Randy Parks in the near lane, lining up next to Rhonda Hartman, who is the IHRA Rookie of the Year in 1994. Rhonda Hartman gets the win in a very close finish. She will go up against Bob Vandergrift Jr. in the next round. Next up, it's the Doug and Doug show. We've got Doug Foxworth in the near lane, Herbert in the far lane. Well, he had the slower reaction time, but it's Doug Foxworth eking out the win here and moving on to the next round. And in the final matchup of round 1 for Top Fuel, we've got Jay Payne and Joe Otama from Old Forge, Pennsylvania. Jay Payne eliminates Joe Otama and will move on to face the 3rd seed Bruce Sarver in round 2. And here's how the Top Fuel bracket looks after 1 round of racing. Only Rhonda Hartman was able to win from the far lane. We will see if that trend continues later on in the day. We've got our Pro Stock duo up next. Swapping lanes once again, it's George Marnell in the near lane and Mike Thomas in the far lane. And this time it's George Marnell with a 596, edging over Mike Thomas, who runs a 6 flat. And it looks like the funny cars are ready to go for round 1 of eliminations. First matchup is Tim Wilkerson, who, if I may break the 4th wall, is still racing funny cars in real life today. That is pretty impressive. He's going up against Jim Epler, the first funny car driver to reach 300 miles per hour, which he did at Heartland Park, Topeka. It's a close finish, and Tim Wilkerson gets the win over Jim Epler. He moves on to face number 1 seed Vaughn Smith. Now we've got Tony Bartone in the near lane going up against Frank Manzo out of Morganville, New Jersey. And it's Manzo getting the win out of the left lane. He will move on to round 2 and face NBA star Tom Hammond. We'll have more on his basketball career later, but first, this is what the funny car bracket looks like after round 1 of eliminations. We got Vaughn Smith going up against Tim Wilkerson in the semifinals and Tom Hammond against Frank Manzo. We're ready for round 2 of Top Fuel eliminations. First up, it's the number 1 seed, John Shoemaker, who is the 1989 NHRA Northwest Division champion. He's going up against Shelly Anderson, who got her first win in Reading, Pennsylvania in 1993. John Shoemaker gets the win in a close one, moves on to the semifinals. Next matchup is Bob Vandergrift Jr. and Rhonda Hartman, whose team suffered some engine issues in qualifying, but it looks like they've got it all sorted out as she's ready on the line in the far lane. Bob Vandergrift Jr. sets the quicker time and will face number 1 qualifier John Shoemaker in the semifinals. Coming to the line now, we've got number 2 qualifier Bobby Taylor going up against Doug Foxworth. Bobby Taylor gets the win, moves on to the semifinals. Last matchup of Top Fuel Round 2, we've got Bruce Sarver going up against Jay Payne. Bruce Sarver gets the win. It's the right lane again, making it a sweep of the second round for the right lane. We'll see if that trend continues. Here's the Top Fuel bracket at the end of round 2. It's Pro Stock time once again. Mike Thomas can clinch the best 3 out of 5 races here. Even if he does, we are going to have a 5th round. But let's see how this turns out. Mike Thomas in the near lane, George Marnell in the far lane. And he'll do it. Mike Thomas will clinch the win in Pro Stock today with a time of 6:18. George Marnell with a 6:36. And now the first matchup for the Funny Car Semifinals makes its way to the starting line. Vaughn Smith, the 2010 Pro Mod champion, is the number 1 qualifier. He's in the near lane. Tim Wilkerson in the far lane. Vaughn Smith takes it. He'll punch his ticket to the finals with a win over Tim Wilkerson. Next up, we've got Tom Hammonds out of Crestview, Florida, going up against Frank Manzo. Earlier, we mentioned Tom Hammonds is an NBA star. He was drafted 9th overall in the 1989 NBA draft by the Washington Bullets and played 12 seasons of NBA basketball. Oh, and both drivers really having to wrestle their cars to keep it in a straight line, but it's Tom Hammonds who crosses the line first and will join Vaughn Smith in the finals. So here is your Funny Car bracket as we start to see the right lane really become dominant. Top Fuel semifinals now. We've got John Shoemaker in the near lane, Bob Vandergriff Jr. in the far lane, and a trip to the finals on the line. Trouble for Vandergriff Jr., a blown engine, and that means John Shoemaker will continue his dominance, number 1 qualifier, and he's headed to the finals. Bobby Taylor now, the 2 seed, gets lane choice going up against Bruce Sarver. The right lane has been dominant all day, and that's the one he's taking. We'll see if it pays off. And it will. Bobby Taylor takes the win and moves on to the finals. Number 1 versus number 2. It's going to be Bobby Taylor versus John Shoemaker in the finals. And with that, folks, we have reached the final round. 3 more races for you all. George Marnell versus Mike Thomas in Pro Stock. Vaughn Smith versus Tom Hammonds in Funny Car. And John Shoemaker versus Bobby Taylor in Top Fuel. First up, it's Pro Stock. Mike Thomas has already clinched with at least 3 out of the 5 total races today, but we are still running all 5 races. Put on a show for the fans. Let's see who takes this last one. And Mike Thomas stalls it. Some major mechanical issues right off of the line. George Marnell will take the victory with a 7:20 as his time. Funny Car final up next. Vaughn Smith versus Tom Hammonds. Smith staying with the hot hand, going with the right lane. Is it the right choice? It is! Vaughn Smith takes the overall win in Funny Car from the right lane. It's almost like these crew chiefs know what they're doing. And then there was one. It's the Top Fuel final for all the marbles. Number 1 qualifier John Shoemaker has elected the right lane against Bobby Taylor. One more race, everything on the line. Who will it be? Perfection! John Shoemaker goes undefeated and gets the overall victory in Top Fuel, and it does not get much closer than this. Let's take a look at this replay. And there you have it, margin of victory .033. And here are your winners as celebrations get underway. Mike Thomas, Vaughn Smith, and John Shoemaker. That'll do it for us here from Supervan City. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this broadcast, and we will see you next time.